everybody in America.
All right. Welcome, guys. Welcome, guys. We are here. I am so excited this week. You guys hear that every week. I'm always excited every week. However, this week I'm super excited. We are here today with Mark Victor Hansen. Everybody knows him for the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, but he's got so many other good ones as well. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you and everyone listening and viewing. How's that?
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Written and co-authored 307 books, sold over 500 million copies. We could go on and on and on about your accolades. It's amazing.
Actually, it's gone up to 318. What's happened is that, as you know, I made all those audio tapes for like Nightingale Kona, which is stuff that every salesperson listens to. And another publisher came back and said, look, book sales are up 30%, even though the bookstores are crumbling. They're going through Amazon. And you're one of the more famous names. Can we transcribe everything you've ever done and put it into other books? So my books like How to Think Bigger Than You Never Thought You Could Think has become out of the book, and Unlimited Riches, Self-Replenishing Wealth has just come out. And, you know, just it's for a lot of people, they're crushed and down. And what we're doing with this new book, Ask, is we're asking everyone to wake up. They're asking themselves, asking others, asking God. And if you ask God, there's always what you said in our prayer together before we started for everybody. There's always fundamental abundance, because John 10:10 said, I've come that you might have life, not I've come that you're going to have scarcity or shortage or lack. And then in the Old Testament is, I shall not want. Everybody, I know there are a lot of people listening who are hanging on by their fingernails right now, and I've been bankrupt upside down and not had enough to eat. So I'm crystal clear. I'm not making fun of anyone. What I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, look, if you bring God inside, because the kingdom of heaven is within. We've all read the story, and it shows up without. All you got to do is get in the right headspace with God, and you're going to find out what this book's teaching is that every one of us has a unique talent. And ask to bridge from your dreams, your destiny. And Crystal and I believe, and I think you believe, my wife wrote this with me, is that you're coded at DNA and RNA at birth, right? It says, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb, right? Makes sense. Spirit is alive forever. Therefore, you got a destiny. And if you're alive, you got a destiny. And it's a big one and a great one and an important one. And you got to set some gigantic goals, even though you're struggling right now. So, and I'm not putting down anyone. I'm just saying we are in a time that you've got to, right? The Apostle Paul said, be transformed by the soul renewing of your mind. You got to go in a new direction. And I've had to do that. You've had to do that. And there's infinite possibilities when you're awake to the infinite possibilities of God, because God only knows surplus and abundance. Too far?
No, I'm like, keep going.
Bring on, brother Mark. Bring on. Come on, baby. And I, as you know, I did church talks pretty much when churches were open for the last 44 plus years. So I feel very comfortable in church, and I also did Chicken Soup at the Soul Bible, which my publisher said, that'll never sell. And I said, okay, give me a note that says I can take it to another publisher. We sell 70,000 a week at Walmart, you know, because I'm really pretty good. We did little stories to get you into the big story, you know, and what happened is that people were afraid of the Bible because it was black cover and silver gold leaf. And so I did my corporate colors, as you might know, are like 1 Minute Millionaire, all that are purple and gold. So I did purple and gold, and then we did the inside so it wasn't scary. It was tan, it was beige, and it had stories, and the people saw it and they said, wow, maybe I could get through reading the Bible, because a lot of people are afraid to read the Bible because they think it's going to send them to hell, and they're already in hell if they think that. So, you know, let's get them out to go to heaven.
So as long as you're talking about reading the Bible, that's a pretty one. It's a big book. It's actually a whole bunch of smaller books. However, people do get intimidated by it. So what are your just various thoughts about that?
I want to do that second. I want to go to the first thing you said first, with your permission. Is that
yes,
when Jack and I gotten turned down for Chicken Soup by 144 publishers, and yeah, we did Chicken Soup at the Christian Soul, and it's a great book of stories. I'm sort of the godfather of it, if you don't mind my self-credentialing and championing that. But because I really have been in church forever, two churches I was saying. The point is, when we did Chicken Soup and had 144 publishers turned us down, our agent fired us down. We were selling 20,000 a week. We got a little publisher to take us, and we couldn't get in New York Times. So the New York Times lady, like Dr. Canfield, Jack graduated third in his class at Harvard. He's a genius. I'm not taking anything away from Jack, but I said, Jack, you call her. She's your alum, not mine. I went to SIU, like Southern Illinois University, which one of three schools I went to, and I loved it. Anyhow, and still love it. They give me an honorary doctor, all kinds of cool stuff. But I said, you call her. He said, no, I can't do that. I said, you can. He said, no, I won't. Okay, I said, look, I don't care. We're already rejected because you're not doing it, and we're selling more books. So I called her up, and she's probably dead now because she was old then, but she was pompous, arrogant, sophomoric, and uptight. And says, don't you know you're a multi-authored book? I said, wait a second. You're telling me New York Times doesn't take any multi-author books? Absolutely not. I said, okay, you're sure? She said, I'm sure. I said, you do the Bible, and it's got 66 books, unless we add maps, and it's 720. She said, you're in next week, boy.
Oh, my goodness.
So the point I'm teaching about this whole thing about ask is you got to ask yourself, what are you going to do when you get objections? Because you're in the insurance business. Somebody's going to say, no, I don't want it, but they got to have home insurance. They got to have car insurance. They got to have life insurance. They got to have disability. Am I right?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
Because I trained in life insurance, still love it and use it and have it and all that my whole life and have lots of insurance on lots of things of myself, my family, my kids, my 6 grandkids, which we think are good. So, so I believe the way it's best sold is with a story and then a good close.
So in the podcast, the community, the journey of a Christian dad, I talk about all the time, and just out in life in general, it's stories and questions.
That's it.
And your book is full of stories and questions. So the book, Ask, the bridge from dreams to your destiny, stories and questions. The whole thing is full of them, and I love it.
Well, it's interesting that I used to travel around, the friendly skies when that was really abundantly available, and did tons of seminars, almost more than anybody, and also owned a seminar company at one time. We did $100 million a year and had 287 employees. So I understand business. But I'm sitting in first class, and the guy, usually it'd be a guy up there with me, but say, well, what do you do? And I just say, I triple your income, double your time off. And shut up. That's a good close. Isn't that cool? The guy said, whoa, do that again? I said, I triple your income, double your time off. He said, how do you do that? I said, well, I do these seminars for every company. I do this company, that company. I named all the companies, some of which be competitive to you, so I won't touch it.
Yes.
I'll do real estate instead. I did everybody from Century 21 to Remax to ERA to everybody. And the guy says, well, but we sell sewers, or we sell pipes, or we sell water. I said, same thing. Sales is stories and a good close. And you got to know how to do stories, and either you borrow them from my Chicken Soup book, or right now the book that'll outsell Chicken Soup, I think, is my new Ask book, because more people are transforming than ever, because we start with the story, which you and I talked about, the story of Michaela, the fable of Michaela, which looks like it's going to become a major movie, hopefully within the next year.
Oh my gosh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and it when you read it, didn't it sort of get your heart and soul, and you just couldn't stop reading it, right?
I'm like, I don't know how to talk about this during the podcast, because I don't want to give the whole thing away at the beginning. The beginning to this book is one of the greatest beginnings of any book, of any movie I've ever seen. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, well, I have 3 Guinness Book of Records. Sold the most books, because I got 318 out, like I've said now. Best title and something else, but I told my wife, because she really wrote that, and we were going to write it together, and then all of a sudden she just had it. God flowed that to her, because and we've had more people tell us that it hit their electric spark plug, because I will never talk for you or the people listening, but it seems to me that a lot of people are having God's crushed out of them, because churches aren't open, and they don't know exactly what to do. And as a result, we're having 130 suicides today, which is atrocious, highest ever. We've got to open it up. We've got to take off the masks. We've got to get herd immunity. We've got to make people feel okay, and we got to start asking ourselves, what do I really want? And God, what do I really want? And what do you really want me to do? So I'm in my right livelihood, and I'm doing my appointed talent, because you got an appointed talent, but you told me before the show started, and you may have told your tribe and maybe not, is it God told you, yes, sir, guess what, sir, you are also going to do your own podcast.
That's right. Yeah. And I had just told my buddies, absolutely not. A couple mentors were at lunch, and they said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do a podcast. I'm certain of that. Hours
And
later, God laughed and he said, "Here you go, buddy."
go ahead. I'll let you lead on now. Did I answer your question? I hope so.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. You sure did. So you brought up another book that just came in that ties into something I wanted to ask you about that is in this book, Ask. But I wanted to take it a step further than what I saw in the book. So when we're talking about our destiny, can you suggest some ways? And some of the ways were in the book, but I wanted to hear it from you. What are some ways to really question and get into your destiny, like your true destiny and something bigger than you can think of?
Okay, so I'm going to answer it two ways, and it is in the book. And what our book asks says, Dan, which I like, is that you've got to get past all the distractions. So the only way to do that is right before you go to sleep, tell your wife you're going to probably be mumbling out loud, but you're going to push back sleep, and 400 times before you go to sleep, you say, God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? Because you were born equipped to know your destiny. It's deep in your RNA and DNA, and you're coded. Every one of us is coded. So let me do it in an easy form for everyone to believe. And then you got to tell your sweetiekins, if you're married or you got kids or whoever, you're going to wake up and say, hey, look, I'm probably going to wake up in the middle of the night because God talks in this still small voice. In this
Yes.
still small voice, right? And he comes at when he wants to come. He doesn't show up on blazing, flaming neon lights like Las Vegas. So he just shows up when he shows up the way he wants to show up. So when Jack and I needed a title for Chicken Soup, we had the stellar book of all time. Audiences I got to have, we were pre-selling it, and we didn't have a publisher and distribution. And so he said, look, Jack, we know what thought commands are. We know how God works. So let's go into our respective homes. He was in Santa Barbara. I was in Newport Beach at the time. I'm now in Scottsdale, Arizona. And 400 times we'll do this. Well, this is before cell phones. So at 2:58 in the morning, he wakes up my house, and I got a daughter becoming a veterinarian. Wakes up. We had 88 animals on 1 acre, which is way too many.
Way too many.
Whole place, because you remember when the phone goes up, you assume, oh, the house on fire, the neighbor's in trouble, or one of my relatives got in trouble. But it was Jack. And Jack said, I got it. I said, what is it? Chicken soup. I said, for the soul. And we said, we do have it. And we both got goosebumps. Now we teach seven roadblocks. Sorry, our book teaches 7 roadblocks. We teach 7 discernments to a chicken soup story. And the first one is got a God bumps, goosebumps, chili bumps. And that did it. To us, and you tell me as one Christian to another, if that's not corroboration of truth experientially in you, it doesn't matter who says the truth. When you hear the truth, you know the truth. And a lot of times you get goosebumps, right? Or chili bumps.
Yes. Yes.
So Jack and I both had it, and then we still got turned down by all those people that didn't see what we saw. Because what they're doing is looking with blinders, and they didn't see, but it was perfect. We sold 500 million books. My goal personally is to keep going and sell 1 billion books, and I'm absolutely on target. And I'm going to live to be 127, because the Bible starts out Genesis 6:3, how long you're supposed to live. Do you remember that? It says, thou shalt have 120 healthy, happy years. Well, now Moses obviously lived 120, and Methuselah lives 967. And I just was studying the Methuselah Society with Peter Thiel, which he plans on living to 1,000. I just thought 127, I want to go 7 past normal, right? Or 7 past what the big guy promises.
Well, maybe, 7 of those may have been rough. So 120 happy years. So
no, that's what I want. Look, if you got a high quality life, you want a high quantity of life. If you got a crappy quantity, then why stay? But I don't want to give death any assistance. So I am programming to I'm 73, and I think you can see that I'm extraordinarily healthy and exuberant and happy, and I got a wife that is just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman, and we have kids and grandkids, and it's just perfect. And people like you that have no better sense to read my stuff. So I just keep buying it. Thank you, guys.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, it's
and I do want everyone to have it, not because of me. I want everyone to not get one, but if you're a Christian, get 2. Get one for you and one for somebody you're going to go over it with. Now, here's where, do you know the term mastermind alliance?
What is it called?
Right. You ought to have a mastermind alliance.
Yes.
Yeah, where 2 get together at the power of 11. Do you see 11 in that? So
Yes.
where did a mastermind come from? Most people don't know, so I want to tell you because it's biblical. Andrew Carnegie, who became America's richest industrialist. And if you're going to New York, I want you to go to his house at 95th and 5th Avenue. If you go to Scotland, I want you to go to his house at Dornoch. I've been to both places. Been there. Cost you $5 to get in. It's now run by the Smithsonian Institute. But it's important because Andrew Carnegie, was called a wee Scotsman. He was short, but brilliant. What he said is he read the Bible, and Jesus never did his first miracle, water into wine, until he had 12 disciples synchromesh, sort of like a battery, right? When you charge a battery, you put in all the stuff. If you take off one, the battery stops. And obviously Judas scooped up the process, and you saw his evil bad end. The point is, Andy is saying, hey, wait a second. Now remember, he has a third grade education, has nothing going for him, and says, I'm going to manufacture, market, steal, and become the richest man in the world and have more employees, and I want to help more people. And then I'm going to spend the first half of my life doing the most good, the least harm, and then I'm going to create the library system. He did it by asking, but he asked himself what Jesus did. He said, Jesus got 12, so I'll have 12. And the first person he had is a name you're familiar with, is Charles Schwab, the first. The current Charles Schwab, the stock guy, is the third, right? But Charles Schwab, and then another guy, Henry Frick. And I'll just do a cute story. When Bob and I wrote 1 Minute Millionaire, we're in New York doing all the big media, and our Random House had given us $1 million each before we did the book, and they're driving us around a limo. And all of a sudden, our agent calls up and said, "Look, one of those shows, NBC or somebody, canceled." And I said to the driver, "Pull over." And I said, "Holy cow, there's the Frick Museum." Now, understand, like you in college, I took Art Appreciation 101, and we saw all this art and art appreciation called the Frick Museum. So Bob Allen and I go in there, because we got 1 hour. I said, "Bobby, we both love art. Let's just go in there." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I already saw that and that and that and that and that and that all in Frick. Holy cow, I'm seeing what I saw back when I was a freshman in mandatory LAS, liberal arts and science, studied the Frick." And then later, my wife and I are on a big TV show in Pittsburgh, and I said, "Honey, let's go to the Frick mansion." We went to his mansion, and it was just extraordinary because he said any man or woman can rise to the level of what they want, not if they go the first mile, because Andrew Carnegie said to all of his people, you got to go the second mile, you got to go the extra mile. And the extra mile is really thinking mile, because the Bible, he said, says, as a man or woman thinketh in their heart, their soul, their spirit, so is he or she. So you go as far as your goals are set. And what I teach is you got to have set too many goals, because the goal is a dreamy destination with a deadline for something bigger, better, more wonderful. And the only way you get there is ask. And if you're interested, I'll tell you what I wrote down to get my perfect wife. That's of interest.
So I know a little bit about that. You wrote down 200 and was it 67 things about what your ideal wife would be like? Is that right?
That's correct. I'd gone through a very painful divorce long ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth. So I said, well, okay, God, I'm going to ask for the perfect woman. I know she can't exist, but if she has kids, I have kids, they get along. She and I have to have exactly the same spiritual values. Because if you don't have the same values, you're done for. Spiritual values, regular values, family values, personal values, exercise values. Right? We read the Bible every morning. And by the way, it works so well. We're falling indefatigably in love. We're back in California, and we're at a green restaurant, a healthy, wonderful place called Mother's. And we're eating, and there's a man of the cloth next to us. And he says, "I just can't help seeing you two are in love." And this guy was really totally white haired. I said, yep. He said, "Do you mind if I tell you how to stay happily married?" I didn't really want him interrupting my conversation, but he's asking a question. So I said,
yes.
Have at it. I said, have at it. He said, well, I'm head of Billy Graham's ministerial marriage ministry. I hope I said that right, for 72 years.
Oh my.
92. I said, wow. Okay. So what makes marriage work? He says, you've got to pray out loud with each other every day. I said, wow, if it's that simple. Crystal looks at me and says, you and I both pray, but we pray silently. We didn't know you're supposed to pray out loud. I mean, we pray out loud in church, you pray out loud in a group, you pray out loud at a funeral, but generally we wouldn't have thought about praying out loud with each other because it's sort of an intimate act. It's the act of God. But you and I prayed out loud before this show started. And
yes.
I've prayed out a lot of places. I mean, I've done everybody's church talks, right? So, and loved it. Everybody from the old days, Norm Vincent Peale, Michael Beckwith, the T.D. Jakes, on and on. Joel, everybody. So, and I love it. So, because I really want everybody to be spiritually up there, a spiritual evocateurs. How's that? That's a nice big term. To evoke the Spirit of God in you, because that's what God is. God is in you. When Jesus asked, "Where's the kingdom of heaven?" It's within. Shows up without. And if you're depressed, despondent, disconsolate, you better get back into understanding God only knows happiness, health, joy. There's two things in the Bible that are only 365 times: fear not and joy. Now it comes in a couple levels of words, but rejoice. This is the day of the Lord. Rejoice and be glad in it. But it's 365 times. My opinion, numerically, symbiologically, and otherwise, is that that's not an accident. Now we could discuss that if you think I've made a mistake, but I don't think.
No. I agree. I've already said that on the podcast in the past. Like, 365 days a year is 365 times he's reminding us.
Yeah. So even Ross Pro, who just passed away a little while ago, senior, said, I wake up every day, and that's what I say to myself. I said, wow, way cool, Ross. Good.
That's awesome. So with the destiny side of things, like, that's the step. That's the move. Repeat that every night before you go to bed.
That's what Jack and I did. You get the title, but you can do it to anything. Okay, so let me do the insurance thing from my point of view to sell insurance seminars. And I'm back 26 years old. I'm bankrupt. I'm upside down. I'm starting to sell insurance sales seminars. I never sold insurance, but sales seminars. Well, I sold a lot of insurance indirectly. How's that? Let me do that.
Yes.
Because I've sold billions of dollars based on everybody that hired me from Prudential and State Farm and Farmers and everybody else. But what I did is I did this process. I read a book called The Magic of Believing, which I asked everyone to become a self-help action book and tape and audio and YouTube junkie. Now, you can look at all my stuff on YouTube, and I'd be glad to, you'll see all of it. It's pretty cool, I think. And it's going to keep getting better because I now know how to improve that even. But I read this great book called Miracle of Belief by Claude Bristol, who said you got to program yourself to get a thought command. And then I read in Psychiatry with Eric Young, Dr. Young, whatever his first name was. Anyhow, and so I said, now remember, back then, we're talking 1974, so that's like almost 50 years ago. I said, man, I want to make $100,000 a year. Now, later on, the world's top insurance salesman, Ben Feldman, said, look, Mark, you got kids? I said, yes, sir. You love them? Yes, sir. I said, if your kid, to make $100,000 a year, you do $400 a day, 250 work days. That gives you every holiday you need. And that's $100,000 a year. He said, if your kids' life depend on that, could you do 1 0? I said, I know what a zero is. Ben, what do you mean 1 0? He said, the difference between 100,000 and a million is 1 0. Could you earn 4,000 tomorrow if one of your daughters or son's life was on jeopardy? Absolutely. I'd do whatever it takes. You know that. I get goosebumps telling you that. I've never had that on that. But so I'm still before that, I was going $400, $400. I'm going to earn 400. I did what I taught you guys, and I wake up, and I had a digital clock next to my bed, and it went 2:58 a.m. and I wake up, and God's saying, he gave me a name I didn't know, and he gave me an insurance company I never heard of, Standard Life and Bill Wyman. But remember, I told you the law is you tell yourself you're going to wake up in the middle of the night, you tell your sweetie-kins, hey, if Mark's telling the truth, which seems weird, but he says it works for him and it works for everybody who works with. Can't miss if you work with this. So write it down, because God only tells you once. And if you're not paying attention, it's adios. Man, what was that idea I had last night? Doesn't stay. It's like a wet, slippery fish. I write down Widener. Next day, I'm out calling on a building that says Metropolitan Life, but underneath it, it says, sorry, I said the wrong name, State Mutual, Bill White, the name I had right. It's lunchtime. I go into the office. Nobody's at the front desk. I look down the hall. His name is on it. I go down the hall, knock at the door. He thinks I'm there to sell insurance. He said in 5 minutes he gave me my check. Back then we were charging $100 a seminar, 4 seminars, $100 each, prepay $400. He said in 5 minutes I gave you $400, and I didn't know if you'd ever come back. you're just so happy to get it. I was so happy to get it because you made my whole day. And he got me to work for the company, and I traveled all over the country, and I traveled to their international seminars in Spain and England. It was a great, for their leaders. It was just a great, wonderful experience. But this stuff works. Read our book, Ask, and once you read these stories and you go, whatever it is you want. And what I wanted back then was $400, and then I listened to Ben Feldman. He said, do 4,000, and then I started going to make $1 million a year. And I found out it was easier to make more than less, which if you're listening to this kind of idea for the first time, you haven't read a lot of self-help action books or my book, you go, oh, I don't know, that guy's telling the truth. He's rich, but it's easier for him to say. No, it's not easy for anyone. Christ said, it's going to be hard, but it's worth it. Life's not easy. It has vicissitudes. Doesn't matter if my name's Mark or your name's Dan. It has some up. Have you felt some pulsations? The big word is the vicissitudes of life about getting me. So there are a lot of people, like I said, that are hanging on by their fingernails. Well, I want you to change your mind and change your life. Improve your mind by learning to become what we're calling a master asker. So you ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And then Crystal and I have created Ask the Book. Once you get the book, get two and go over every question in the book with your best friend, your spouse, your business partner, your mastermind partner, your staff member, your church colleague, whatever it is, whoever it is that you trust, to ask serious questions, like the question you asked before about how do you think big. It was at the end, we asked all the biggest questions, the last chapter. And one of the questions is from Dr. Peter Demand, MIT, Harvard guy, engineer, MIT, Harvard MD, and who started the X Prize and done marvelous stuff. But he says, what are you going to do personally? What are you going to do personally to positively affect 1 billion, spelled with the B, people during this decade, 10 years? What are you going to do positively to affect 1 billion people during this decade? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish selling 1 billion books. And we are on target. This book, like I said to you before, is not only selling like wildfire, and we're thankful, but our publisher, who was on the phone with us just a few minutes ago, is telling us great, wonderful things are breaking through. And it's selling international because everybody's reading it, thank gosh, in Australia and Africa and everywhere. But we're also working on making a major movie that we think will be seen. And then we're working on how to help source all the church people to start asking, because most people are afraid to talk to other people and say, oh, come to church with me once. Now, I got an idea you don't have that fear. But I always drag people to church with me. And I said, look, I know you are Jewish and you don't go to a Christian church, but you're my best friend. You're coming with me to church. And they went, and they came back saying we'd have lunch afterwards or whatever. And they said, I really like that. This guy, back then it was Norman Vincent, that's the guy who wrote Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah.
I really like him. I said, I love him. Later on in my life, after I became super successful and very charitable, I won the Horatio Alger Award, which he started, which means I came from rags to riches and have been accessibly philanthropic. And like 10 of us win it a year, you get it in the Supreme Court, they put a gold medal over your neck, Judge Clarence Thomas does. And only really, really good people like us or really, really bad people get to go to the Supreme Court, And so every year we do that, and then we help 25,000 at-risk kids a year get to go to college, because all of us, Oprah's a member, I'm a member. In my class was Tom Selleck, who I just love as an actor. He's just great, right? He's bringing respect back to police, which is where it belongs.
Yeah, the police definitely should be respected for sure. So what are some questions some powerful questions that you've either discovered or had an impact on your life, or you believe can impact others' lives? What are some key powerful questions?
Well, let me do the question intrinsic to the story. So I'm bankrupt in 1974. I've been at SIU, but I got with the smartest guy ever, Buckminster Fuller, invented a lot of stuff, but geodesic domes, spherical buildings made out of triangles. Like, you got a big dome in St. Louis. I'm sure you've seen the triangulated dome. That's one of Bucky's. But
yes.
Hundreds of thousands. So I'm trying to be Bucky in 1974, and I built the Wall Street Racket Club, Botanical Gardens, aviaries, houses. Good news. Bad news. I'm making too many a year. Bad news is I'm building out of plastic, PVC, polyvinyl chloride. When the oil embargo hit, And they said, we can write checks and bring your bank's about. Well, I get so freaked out. I asked myself, oh my God, what if I go bankrupt? Well, the biggest library in the world then was New York Library. I'm a member. I got a card. I go in and I check a book out of the library. How to go bankrupt by yourself. Right? The point of your question is, if you ask the wrong question, you go the wrong way. I was devolving. And I think God, if you read Genesis 1:28, you were here in the image and likeness of God. You were here to evolve. You are here to create. 3 C's: contribute, create, contribute, and be charitable. Like, I've never written a book that we don't tithe on. That's why I sell more books than anybody, because, you know, the whole Bible is a book of tithing. Malachi 3:16, you know, all the stuff Jesus said, you know, as you sow, you'll reap, all that stuff. I can go into any of it in depth if you want, but I'm bankrupt. I'm upside down. I'm living with 3 guys, the 4 of us in a rental house up in Hicksville, Long Island, New York. You can see that's not high styling and profiling. I'm in front of another guy. I don't have any money, so I'm sleeping in a sleeping bag in front of another guy's room because I'm the
Sleeping bag.
Sleeping bag. It's not good. Not good. But I kept saying, okay, God, I got it. Tell me, do you want me to slash my wrist and die because I'm such a schmuck? Because I thought self-worth and net worth were the same. Now, people listening need to hear that. Because if you lose your money or you lose your job or you lose your stuff, and you got to tell your wife and your kids and your family and your peers that you're a schmo, you know, you don't feel good about yourself, and you go, oh, and I felt terrible. You know, I felt trashed. I had all these employees and now I got nothing, right? And nobody cares about you when you're down. They only like you on the way up. On the way up, they talk to you. On the way down, you thought were friends were, bye-bye. Never heard of you. Don't know you. Don't remember you. I don't take your calls anymore, right? It really happens, and it happens fast. When you see, you don't ever want to go south. You want to stay in awareness of God, because God gives you self-awareness, self-expression, self-mastery, and then self-realization. We'll talk about that in a minute. Anyhow, I am. I say, okay, God, what am I supposed to do? And God says, what do you want to do? And I thought, wow, that is cool, because that's the whole Bible, right? What do you want? So I said, okay, I want to be a speaker. I want to talk to people that care about things that matter, that make a life transformative difference. And I wrote it down. I go to my 3 roommates in the morning. Now, that miracle number 1 is God said, okay, go do that. So I go to my 3 roommates, and remember, I'm a 26-year-old, so I'm nobody and I'm not famous or anything. So I say, guys, any of you know a young speaker that's not a Broadway star, not a celebrity, not a lawyer, not a doctor, not a white-haired cotton top? I got to have somebody I can relate to. The guy says, yeah, best speaker I've ever heard. He's talking to Hawthorne to all of us in real estate. Here's my pass. I can't go today. You go, say you're me, and you get in. Second miracle. I mean, it happened that fast, right? I talked to God. God told me what to do. I go to my roommates, and I get to go. I hear this guy, Chip Collins, for 3 hours, mesmerize the audience. I get goosebumps telling you this. I was blown away. I said, that's what I want to do. I go up to him at the end. Now, he's had 500 people hugging him, kissing him, thanking him, buying his stuff. And I say, I want to take you to lunch. Now, there's no reason he should do it. But he says, yeah, you can take me to lunch. That'd be great. You're buying. I said, I'm buying. I want to do what you do. He said, look, kid, the chance you make it, 1 in 1,000, you ain't going to make it. Why don't you go do something else? You don't have to buy me lunch. I said, no, I do. Just tell me the 4 questions I got to ask so I can build a business. He said, look, I'll tell you, but you got to stay out of real estate. I own the 5 boroughs of New York. I own it. I built it. I don't want you messing in my marketplace. I said, okay, give me a marketplace, because I don't know what to do. He said, go to life insurance. It's a bottomless pit for motivation. They'll never run out of need for you. And just stay out of my market, and I'll help you if you make it. But I'm not ever going to see you again. I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. Adios. He told me exactly what to do, what to say. So I called on 10 people the next day, like he said, at 7:30 at night, because I'm really willing to work around the clock. And I go see this guy at a metropolitan business. Nobody's in the office except the owner, the manager, the general agent. I go in, and the guy weighs 450 pounds if he weighs an ounce. And that's naked out of his pocket. I mean, this guy was a big boy. And he and I became friends. We hit it off. He said, nobody works as hard as I do. And now I see you're willing to work around the clock. I said, yes, sir. And they said, well, I just want you to know my name's Tony. And I said, now the question he gave me was to close. You'll love it. I've told Tony, you do seminars every Tuesday morning at 7:30. I said, good, I'll be here. You want the first one on prospecting, presenting, good work habits, or closing? He said, I want it on prospecting because these guys don't know how to prospect, and obviously you do. And I didn't really know how to teach it at that moment, but I learned, I teach it, and I did tapes on it and everything else. You can get them at Audible. Anyhow, the point is, he says, okay, now what I got to tell you is that I'm going to give you something nobody else could give you. He says, I'm the #1 guy, Mark, in the #1 insurance company in the world, Metropolitan. My name's Big Tony. You know, forget. Here's a directory to all my other general agents and managers. What I want you to do, Mark, starting tomorrow, you're going to call them. You're going to tell them, Big Tony sent you. I'm the biggest. There's no question. They take your call because Big Tony told you. You have any problems? You and I are now friends. You friends? Are you loyal? I said, Tony, you know anybody more loyal than me, baby. Man, you tell me what you need. You got it. If I could score for you, I will. He says, you're going to make my agents. You promised me to increase my sales 10%. I make $1 million. That means you just raised me $100 million for $100. That's all you got to do. I'll be happy. You got the directory. Go get it. Well, I was doing 4 talks a day.
Wow.
I was getting up at 6, I was talking sometimes at 6, 10, 2 in the afternoon, 8 at night, and in between times I'd run around and up. Now, you're not old enough to remember, but before cell phones, we had dimes. Chip told me to buy $2 worth of dimes every day and have them in my pocket because you go to the phone and you go, this is Mark, and I'm in the neighborhood. Can I come visit you right now? And sometimes I just cold call because I thought I can't go on Social Security. I don't have any, so I don't know exactly what to do. So I got nothing else to do, and I'm having a ball because they were starting to hire fast. And you know, they gave me the tapes on everything, so I listened to them and driving around in a little old beat up Volkswagen that I had with permanently air conditioned. And in 2 months' time, I'd made enough money. I went to a guy who I might be going too far. I'll be real quickly. I met this guy who owned a car leasing company in he was in Long Island. So I say, look, I went bankrupt. I'm telling you the truth. But right now, you can see I got all these bookings. Here's a list of all the bookings I got. I got money coming in for at least the next 6 months because I almost sold my calendar full. And this is what I'm charging. And he said, go pick out the car you want. And I picked out a cranberry colored white interior Chrysler Cordoba with Corinthian leather.
Oh, I remember him. Yeah.
I went from bankrupt because I love Lee Iacocca, who I later met and got to go to dinner at his house even, to suddenly having his car. I told Lee that story and he said, man, that's one of the best stories. I should have sold more of those cars. I said, I was faithful. I bought 2 of them all the time. I did 100,000 miles a year back then. I was pounding.
Wow.
I just racing from. There's nothing else to do, man. I was in heaven. And then what happened, Dan, which got me, is that people said, I love that story, the other story in the book. And I went, ta-da. So the first book I did was Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. And now remember, these are little audiences, 6 people, 12 people, never over 50 for the first 3 years. I sold the book and I said, this is not a New York Times bestseller. This isn't even a national bestseller, but it's my bestseller. And it costs $10. And I want to assign it to you, your wife, your kid, and Dan, if you're in the front row. If you got a dog, I'll put the dog's name in it if you want. This guy's a wackadoo. And I was, but I sold 20,000 copies at $10 each. I took in $200,000. I tripled my income. I was back living, I'm up at Garden City with a real nice estate. And I'm smoking, and I've never stopped. So I know you asked a simple question, but I did a ton of little questions in there because life, to make your life work, you've got to ask questions. You got to ask questions to grow, ask questions to get your destiny, questions to write a book, questions to invent stuff, questions to source and serve people, because everybody needs somebody and everybody needs something. And everybody has, you got to keep asking yourself, what's my unique talent? If you don't know, ask 10 of your friends. If you're one of my closest friends, I say, Dan, I need you to write out, what do you think my UT, what's my unique talent? And you will be amazed at what they share with you. And then you'll know who you are and what you can do and how far you can go. Because remember, God's unlimited. God in you is unlimited. The only one limited is you and I. But God gave us free will to wake up, take off the limit, take off the withhold, take off the blinders, to say, okay, God, what is it in Mark Victor Hansen that I'm supposed to do? Well, I'm supposed to inspire people to hope, help, love, joy, and unlimited success and prosperity. Well, I'm on target for my right livelihood. And if I can source and serve any of your listeners, obviously I want them to start with Ask. They can get all my other books. They're online. You can go to bookstores, get them. You can buy them at used bookstores. I'll do a cute story about that. This week I had to go to a dentist. It cost like $8,000 to get a tooth. I broke a tooth. I didn't know teeth could break into your gum. It cost $8,000 on extricated out of your gum. But every bone can break. I've broken bones, leg and stuff like that. But amazing. I get to the dentist and he bought all my books because he's a new dentist. I moved here to Arizona years ago, but this guy's new and he said, I got to start buying your stuff. He buys chicken soup at the dental store. He says, there's something wrong with this. It's signed to another dentist by your partner, Dr. Cantor. And I bought it as a new book. I said, that's not my fault. That's Amazon selling used books so they're new. I said, I said, look, I'm glad you got it. It's a great book. We did a good job. It'll help you. But we really bought it for dentists to give to their patients to build more patients. Because a book is the best calling card you can ever give. And when we're done, I'll tell you about that privately if you're interested.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great.
I can tell everybody if you want. That's up to you. But I'm really here to talk about Ask and saying, look, most people hit 7 roadblocks to ask.
Yes. These roadblocks were so good in this book. And I'm like, yes. There's maybe 3 that I've just all 7 familiar with, but there was about 3 that just really spoke to me.
I'll go backwards here. I'll ask you the question. Which ones hit you? Unworthiness, naivete, doubt, excuses, pattern paralysis, disconnection. Which one hits you the most?
So unworthiness is the number 1 by far.
Okay, so what caused that, do you think? And if you don't know, tonight your question is when you go to sleep is, God, why do I feel unworthy?
So it was a number of different things. I was the smallest guy in my class by far. I was also the youngest guy in my class. So from a sports standpoint, I was always behind everybody else. And I knew that I was going to have to outwork everybody. So I couldn't just show up. I had to show up and, be all the way prepared and work harder than anybody and work longer than anybody. And kind of that Babe Ruth story about you can't beat a man who won't quit. Well, I wasn't going to quit.
What were your best sports?
My best sports, I grew up in an environment where people didn't play basketball. So since everybody played soccer, I moved to basketball. So I could, if I stayed in my community, I could do really good. As soon as other communities came around where I wasn't that good, but I could play basketball with my guys in my neighborhood.
I got to tell you that we got a 9-year-old grandson
and I intentionally did that because nobody was playing. So if I practiced that a lot and they weren't, I could play.
Our grandson is really superior at basketball at 9 years old, and he's little yet, so like you, and he's precocious, so he's advanced in his grade, so he's dealing with bigger kids. It was fascinating. Last week, his school's back in Arizona, we're open. So the school happened, and teacher said, you got to do a book report. So he went and got a book. His mom took him to the library because Grampy says everybody's got to have a library card. Everybody, and only 1% of us do. So understand, I'm clear in my family as a Christian father and grandfather. So he goes and he gets a book on George Washington, the first president, and a book on who's the best basketball player now? I keep wanting to go. My mind goes.
LeBron James.
Yeah, right. You knew. So he gets a book on LeBron. He reads both of them, and comes back to it. Says, "Mom, I wrote the book report and said, well, what did you write on?" I said, LeBron James is great, but he's just a basketball player. As great as he is, a president is the most important guy around, and this guy created America. He wouldn't be king. And I thought, holy cow, 9 years old, he can discern that. At 9, no offense intended to me, but I don't think I could discern that. And he read both books totally in the weekend because he really wants to be a basketball champion, and he'll be a smart one.
Yeah, so that one hammered me, and other things like trying out for a soccer team or whatever, and we did something called Indian runs, so 12 guys in a row, and then you try to run to the front fast and all that stuff. Well,
did you outrun them?
What's that?
Did you outrun them? I mean,
no, I couldn't. These guys were thoroughbreds, and I was. So it really made me angry that I couldn't outwill them on that particular thing. So it was maybe a month ago or so, and I was out with these guys working out and they're like, hey, let's do some Indian runs. And I'm like, huh, it's been like over 30 years since, all right. Well, it was my turn to run to the front and I let out this primal scream and I sprinted faster than they'd seen any, guy in this group sprint. And I was like, champion right here. And we do Indian runs now. We've done them particular times and it's like every time I just get emotional and fired up and like nobody's going to wear me out or beat me.
The story of Joseph's many colored coat is exactly that story. What you meant for my harm, God meant for my good. His brothers didn't like that he had the vision that he was going to rule the empire, ends up being an Egyptian empire rather than a Jewish empire. But the boys did everything wrong. I can go through the depth of the story. I'm sure you know it. And the point is, he was second in command underneath the Pharaoh. And it took a long time, and he had to be in jail for 13 years, and he got besmirched by the Pharaoh's, by the second in command, Potiphar's wife, all that stuff. But it doesn't matter. It's taking you 30 years, but you are the fastest, the toughest, the best. Because you ask yourself, how do I do this again and again? And that's how you overcome a sense of unworthiness. You just keep hitting the blocks until you pull it off.
And I think you're an affirmation guy also, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I define affirmation as a word you say to yourself, others say to you, that you believe, because it's done unto according to your believe, think about, ask upon, act, and then act upon, and then become. So, right, if you affirm, and the Bible teaches this, in Joel it says, let the weak, I think it's Joel 3:18, but I might have the number wrong, but let the weak say I'm strong. Well, then you got to let the poor say I'm rich, because if you keep saying I'm poor, you're going to be a slave to welfare, and welfare has its place, but it shouldn't be a resting place, right? For a Christian, you're supposed to work. You're supposed to, remember I said, you got to create, which is God. If God created, then you and I are in the image and likeness of God. We're here to create. We're here to contribute, right? Christ is at the supper, and the boys say, hey, boss, what is it we do to become great? Greatest amongst you is servant of all, not the servant of yourself, right? That's ego, right? Servant of all. Right? So if you want greatness, serve all. And even Martin Luther King said, any of us, a janitor can become great if he or she serves greatly. Works for me. When I got to study India, I got to go to India. My president of the university liked me, and I was a student leader at SIU. Said, I want you to go to an LDT. And I said, well, less developed country. And I said, good, I'll go to India. And they sent me there and had a wonderful time. But I am there and studied all about Mahatma Gandhi, the great spirit of him, and then Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa's 57. She's walking down the street and has never done anything in her life, and all of a sudden she's an untouchable. Now, the caste system is Brahmin is the top untouchable, means they probably got leprosy and it's contagious. She sees Christ in this guy's eyes. She scoops him up, takes him home and heals him. Goes to the head of the archdiocese and said, I'm going to start the Sisters of Charity. He says, well, how much have you got? She said, 3 cents. Gee, you said, get out of here. Nobody starts the Sisters of anything with 3 cents, and I'm not giving you anything. She said, you don't get it. He said, what don't I get? He said, 3 cents and God, I can do anything. Now that's critical because there's some people out there that are hanging on so bad because 50 million of us don't have a job, even though there's 10 million jobs, but the 10 million jobs aren't equal maybe to what they were doing. So they got to go create a whole new enterprise for themselves and wake up the entrepreneur, which in my book, 1 Minute Millionaire, I say an entrepreneur finds a problem, and there's 8 billion problems. Everyone's got problems. Finds a problem, fixes it, scales it, and makes a vast profit. Right? And I own a couple of companies, so I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I know how to do it and have done it, and everybody can do it. That's the point. I mean, assuming you're healthy-minded and assuming you have built a team to build your dream, which is what every jock does, he or she, like Michael Jordan, because you and I love basketball.
Yep.
But Michael Jordan was good always, but he didn't really become great until Scottie Pippen showed up. Once Scottie showed up, suddenly he got a coach that he said, I'll only work for that coach because every one of us, and I got to be on a program with Phil Jackson once. He is big. He like Shaq has a 22-foot shoe. Shaq stepped in me once in the game, so I'm real clear about how much Shaq weighs. But I'm impressed with all of them. But it's only a real leader that looks for other superstar players and then will get a leader to lead him.
Yes,
If
yes.
you're afraid of a leader, then you're not going to be a good leader, right? You're just a dictator and you're going to be a punk. That's my opinion. I've never said that before, and I hope it makes sense what I said. Does it make sense what I just
Yeah, it
said?
makes sense. Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
I think the guy with 9 rings as a coach is probably the best coach in basketball ever. Is there anyone with more? I don't know. I've never looked
I
that up.
yeah, he might have the most. Yeah, he might have the most. I think he does. And I know Michael Jordan said he wanted to retire as opposed to play for any other coach in the world. So
Yeah, and I'm not picking on Phil, but he had some health challenges
he
against
did.
Jericho or something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
his back got real bad on him. Yeah, yeah.
that's what it wasn't. I got it wrong. I apologize.
Yeah, so on the worthiness thing, the other thing I did was affirmation. So I came up with I am worthy. Seems like if I feel I am unworthy, let's battle that, let's fight that, let's transform the mind and let's attack it. So every morning I'd get up and I'd write down I am worthy and I'd say it out loud and I'd say it with emotion. And then I'm like, okay, cool. I feel like I am worthy. What else do I got? And I'm like, you know, I'm worthy of success too. So even though I don't have any money right now, I can have some. And I'm going to go figure out a way to get it. But the first thing I need to believe is that I'm successful. After I worked on that for a while, then I started thinking to myself, what about this God thing? And I said, we've got this relationship, like things are cool, things are moving along, but I'm, a little distant from him. And with that, I'm not worthy of God's love. And I'm like, well, let me switch that. So I switched and I said, I am worthy of God's love. And I started just embracing that. And I was like, cool, let's have a relationship. Let's start doing this. And I'm sorry. And I know you're waiting for me. And I know I've been worthy this whole time, but I didn't feel that way for a while. And he's like, come on back.
So everybody out there listening, let me unwrap what Dan just did because it is perfect what he did. First of all, whatever your withhold is, if it's unworthiness, you got to retransplant that with worthiness. A couple ways to do that. He started every morning doing it. And did you do it in front of the mirror?
No, I didn't do it in front of the mirror. Some days, yes, but not every day.
Yeah, it behooves you to do the mirror because then you're talking to you and preferentially probably don't let your kids see it. Don't let your wife see it because, they're going to go, I thought Dad was waxed, but now I am sure of it. I don't know who he's listening to. It must be that Mark Victor Hansen guy because he's waxed. But I'm waxed successful, and all you got to do is look at it online and see how great our kids are. So they're waxed powerful. So, and it works. So stuff works. And then the third thing you do is you get a 3x5 card and you write, I am worthy. And you look at it. We teach in our Ask book, the Bridge from Your Dream Destiny, 4 times a day because that's what works. Most importantly, in the morning when you wake up, first thing, because your mind, I can do this psychiatry and psychology of it, but it's in what's called a hypnagogic trance. So first thing in the morning, at lunchtime, at dinner time, and most importantly, number one important is before you go to sleep. Because here's the deal. Subconscious never sleeps. It goes from conscious to subconscious, and every one of us, subconscious, you get in the car and you've been driving for 30, 20 years, 30 years, however old you are. When you get in the car, you don't even really think about it too much. Now, if you're really spiritual, you say, and you're into, I happen to like Archangel Michael. I say, Archangel Michael, make sure Crystal and I are safe in the car, the kids in the car are safe, the grandkids. But you don't need to do intercessory prayer. But you drive automatically. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And if you want all your people to drive safely, you tell them, right? Say, put white light around the car every time they get in. But the point is, it's automatic. That's a subconscious thing. You wake up and you know it's time to brush your teeth and have good breath and take a shower. All that stuff's pretty much automatic at your age. So the point is if you do the I'm worthy enough, you wash out because remember, 9 out of 10 inputs all of us get based on all the research are negative. Therefore, you've got to over-impound this affirmation, and it's best if you do it on a 3x5 card. You look at it, read it, or look in your mirror while you're shaving, or you're doing your makeup, or you're in the shower alone. And you saying it out loud is really profoundly powerful because you have the Bible is clear. It says you have the power to curse or to bless with your tongue. And I want you all to bless yourself. I mean, I signed my letters, and I probably signed when we did this thing, and I sent you all that stuff, bountiful blessings. Because here's the deal. If you don't accept it, guess who it comes back to? The guy who sent it. Because the law of cause and effect. I want to be blessed, but I want my kids blessed, my family blessed, my city blessed, my county blessed, my country blessed. Blessed, as the Bible says, going out and coming in. And I want the world blessed. I want the world to be happy campers, free enterprise capitalists working together in a powerful way, because capitalism is positive work among strangers, right? Where everybody wins, nobody loses if you're doing it right. Now, there are a lot of people right now in government that are letting people lose, but that's not real capitalism.
Disconnection was the other one that really struck me. I feel like a lot of guys get stuck in disconnect.
And how did you get disconnected? By the way, if I'm asking.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
absolutely. So how I fell into it was just you get into a routine and things aren't quite working exactly the way you want. So you groove into a lane and you're like, you just dig in and forget about the rest because it's frustrating, it's painful, it's whatever, but it's easier for me to stay right here.
That's right. But you want to reconnect, and back to this thing about what we said about Crystal and I praying every morning, and you pray, God, help me be connected. God, this day I'm going to meet with this person, this person, this person. In my case now, because we're doing most stuff on telephone and Zoom calls like this, we visualize that every one of them are going to go well. Like this, in my mind, has gone spectacularly well for the two of us. But I've done two more earlier than this that have went well, because we only Zoom on a couple. I used to do every day, but we've got so much to write. We've got more contracts than we've ever had, because people really want to have new stories told, and I got a lot I want to share yet. More than ever. I've spent my life inputting, and I'm now keep inputting, but output. But the deal is you pray to stay connected, to plug in, right? Because you're plugging into God, which is universal, infinite, omnipresent, omniscient, right? God always is, was, and will be. But you and I can get in the flow of that, and then you stay connected, and then you stay stress-free, and you're set free, spiritually set free. And that is the high goal. And that's why I said you go from self-awareness, which comes out telling yourself you're worthy, to self-expression. You went out and got clients for your insurance company or whatever else is doing. Then you go to self-mastery, where you say, wow, I'm getting really good at this. I talk to somebody, say this, this, and this, and they give me their auto insurance, right? And their kids and their grandkids or whatever. And then you go to self-realization, where you understand what God means, who you are in God and who God is in you. That's the high revelation.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes.
I mean, we're Christian, so I can only tell you, and if I get a better answer tomorrow, I'll give you a better answer tomorrow. But that's where I am right now in my personal Christian journey, which has been lifelong. And if I wasn't a motivational speaker, I would have been a mega. I'd be running a mega church, no question.
No question about it. No question about it. So having the self-awareness and then the courage to get out of that disconnected,
right,
passive life.
And let's talk about that, because here's what all of us got: teenagers or grandkids or teenagers listening. And if you do, Chicken Soup as a Teenage Show is a wonderful thing. Have them read that to you. But here's the problem with disconnection: you've got to ask at meals, no cell phones. I'm sure you've seen this.
Correct. Yeah, we've got an absolute no electronics at the table.
To her mom, what the heck do I care about you? I got this going. And the reason kids, they think they're connected because they're on TikTok or whatever. I'm not picking on the social media. I'm saying in our family, and I'm only talking for the Hansen extension, and all my brothers, and when we get together, we have big family meetings. My part of the family and my wife's part of the family. She's 1 of 9, so we have 258 get together when we have a family get together. She knows all of them. I go, wow, this is great. Anyhow, I know most of them, 90% of them, but no cell phones. They'll get back to you. And if somebody dies, I'm sorry that happened, but you'll get back to them when we're done with this hour dinner or lunch or picnic or whatever we're having. Or we do game night on Sunday night after church and everything, and do a prayer. We do games. We think it's better to shut off the television and really, because if you ask, like I talked about Everett, he could articulately say what Grampy stands for. And I think it's important that that as far as I'm concerned, that's connected. And that's what Christ said is I'm your father and you're supposed to be a good father. At least that's how I read it. Now, if I've read it in error, I'll take all the heat. But I think that's what Apostle Paul's 50% of the New Testament was saying.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You, Greg Haig.
Oh boy, Greg and I are close. How do you know Greg?
So I don't know Greg, but I was reading about that and I caught this one little line in the book that said his ambition was to write the greatest book for fathers of all time.
It's a good book. You got to read it. He signed his to me, and his dad was called Chubby, and Greg Haig, tried to emulate his dad. That's why you got to be careful who you pick as role models and mentors. And that's in the story. So I'm not talking behind my. There's a guy who owns 72 Hours Sold, which is $1 billion guy in a $1 billion company. But two issues is that he became chubby, and he writes something for our local paper every week called Chubby Says. He loved his dad. His dad was brilliant. He's brilliant, and he hired me starting 40 years ago. So we've been friends a long time and have meals together, mostly breakfasts. But what happened is that he had everything. He had 2 jets. He had boats. He had traveled around the world. He had a gazillion motorcycles, bunches of homes, and wasn't happy. And that's the story we have in our Ask book, one of 26 stories. And he goes out to breakfast with his best friend and said, "I'm just not happy." So the guy did the question right. He said, "Well, what is your definition of happiness?" See, if you don't have a definition, if you don't have a metric, if you don't have a meter, if you don't have a barometer, of course you can't be happy. So
I can read what when Greg asked him back.
Go ahead, read.
Yeah. So Bruce Redding says, Greg, happiness is a deep sense of satisfaction that comes from a pursuit of worthwhile goals of your own choosing. What's happening is that you have confused pleasure and purpose. You're trying to get happiness through the pleasure of buying stuff and taking trips, and that doesn't work. Happiness is waking up every day with purpose. It can be about building a business, seeing the world, learning everything about the world. It can be about making a nonprofit amazingly successful, but you've got to have purpose or you won't be happy. What is wrong with you is that you have lost your purpose. Purpose is the cake and pleasure is the icing on the cake.
Thank you for even knowing where that was. I happen to know it because I wrote it. I mean, he dictated it and I transcribed it and wrote it and said it a lot. So, but the point is, Greg, who's a dear close friend, lives in the neighborhood here, wakes up every day and says, basically, what is my purpose today? To be, in love with my spouse. His kids are all great, and he is phenomenally charitable. Just tell you that last year, my wife and I don't know if I've got permission to do this, but we were.
I give you permission. It's okay.
Okay, good. So chairman of Child Help, which has helped 11 million kids get out of abuse, neglect, and sex trafficking. And they're headquartered here, but we're worldwide, and we have 800 for a child, so kids can get out of it if their parents are beating them or the school or anything. So it's really a really good organization run by 2 little 84-year-old women that are started in the USO and helped kids, and just wonderful. So I tell Greg, we're doing that. He said, "Well, good. You're coming to my house. I'll bring all my friends and we'll raise $1 million one night for the charity. Is that good for you?" And I said, "Done." That's how purposeful the guy is. I didn't ask him. He asked me if he could raise $1 million. And I said, "Yeah, because we got to raise $1 billion to build the school here, so we can take kids from all over the world and train everybody to do the Child Help does the best stuff ever. That we take the kid, we train the kid, we get him or her foster parents, whatever it takes, we do it. And we got everybody in the government of Arizona, the governor, and everybody is part of it. So we really try to end abuse, neglect, and in this state, you better not do sex trafficking. Our police are really solid against, and boy am I. You mess with any of those kids, and we know about it, you're not in good stead here. I'll tell you that in Arizona.
Wow. That is a great purpose to be behind.
Yeah. So we love it, and these women love us. And, I tithed on one of our books early 30 years ago to child help. And then when we moved here, we bumped into him at breakfast. And Crystal said, "There's Sarah O'Mara and Yvonne Feddersen." Now, they were movie stars. You may not be old enough to remember, but Yvonne Feddersen, husband, Don Feddersen did all the big shows like The Millionaire and My Three Sons and Opie and Griffin Show and all that. So they did pretty well, but they've been charitable the whole time and just amazing. If you ever come here, you want to go to church, they run a little chapel and they heal people. They're just amazing women. They're in the back of the book, as you may have read.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're just terrific, terrific women.
So have we, is there anything in the book that you want to hit on that really struck your heart that you want to share with the guys, the Christian dads in the group and listening to the podcast?
Well, I'd ask you to read through the whole New Testament out loud, and if you can get up 15 minutes early and read just a paragraph or a page or something, and to your wife, and if you're just trying to have more love, I'd say lock in on Corinthians first, right? First Corinthians and Second Corinthians. You just go paragraph and then talk to each other about what it means, and then do a quick prayer together, and then go off to work or take the kids to school or make breakfast or whatever it is you got to do. I'd say that'll just do one. I mean, Crystal and I attempt to do an hour every day. Now, sometimes with a podcast like this morning, we're on a gigantic podcast way before dawn, but generally that's the first thing we do when we wake up.
So first core, but that is such a great one to read. And I love the suggestion to read with your wife. A good friend of mine, he's got a handyman business that's doing quite well. And the name of his business is First Core.
There you go. And most people wouldn't even know what that means.
Exactly. And he's like, it's got that name so that people say, hey, what's that about? Then I get to preach the gospel.
Yeah, right.
You mentioned earlier about praying with your wife and praying out loud. And when the guy that leads our church, when he has marital counseling, the couple comes in, he goes, they talk for 15 minutes or 45 minutes and about how much they are having problems and everything. And he says, okay, did you get it all out? We did. All right. Can I ask you one question? When was the last time you guys prayed together?
Way cool.
He said, after 40 something years, I haven't had one couple answer that question with it was yesterday.
Yeah. So it's like that little old man who said, pray out loud together every day.
Yeah. So that's
morning and night. And then we also bless all of our kids and grandkids in the world, just because, and all the projects we're in, because as you can see, we're in a lot of projects, because you're here. We got to do this, and then I'm going to sound a little bit. We got to close down because I got another thing I got to be on in a few seconds here. But you can't retire on yourself, and you can't retire from something to nothing. So when I wrote a book with Art Linkletter, the guy who had Kids Save the Darndest Things, a lot of stuff, we said, don't retire from something to nothing. Retire, put on new tires, and go in a new, better direction. And there's so many, and the one that I'm keenest on for everybody listening that's senior to me, and is, you know how to read, go teach somebody who doesn't know how to read to read. It's like so critical, because I say you got to read to be freed, and we got 4 billion people that can't read, and we got a lot of kids who are graduating in California. 75% of one of my professor sister-in-laws, 75% of the kids in California can't read when they graduate high school. Do you understand? Just
wow.
Judge. I know judge and be not judged, but it's just not okay.
No.
You were useless to yourself. I'll do one thing, just indicting.
We always like to have people close out with a challenge. I don't know if you got a challenge for the guys.
The challenge is I want everyone to read our Ask book, get 2 of them, read it with somebody else, and transform your life, and then write us at askthebookclub.com. And I apologize that he was knocking on the door saying, it's time to go. You got to get on the go. Gotcha.
All
right. This has been great fun for me. I hope for you and all the listeners. Thank you for having me on, Dan.
You bet. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.